You've said that if you want to 10x your money, buy Bitcoin. If you want to 100x your money, buy Bitcoin with someone else's money. And if you want to 1000x your money, then buy Bitcoin with someone else's money and lever it. But for the average person watching who's probably a wage earner and not a business leader, what do you think is the best way to 100x your money? Can you still do it with Bitcoin, and what types of strategies can be deployed?
I think the best way to get superior returns, 100x type returns, if you're an individual, would be you keep your day job, and so you maximize the cash flow you generate via whatever your profession is. And the near-term reaction is always the market cramps and everybody sells everything. But the long-term reaction is, if I had all my money invested in Bitcoin instead of invested in that company, I wouldn't have been affected by tariffs.
세일러는 미국의 기업 가이자 투자자로 소프트웨어 회사 마이크로스트래티지의 공동 창립자이자 회장입니다. 특히 비트코인 강력한 옹호자로 유명하며 2020년부터 마이크로스트래티지를 통해 대규모 비트코인 투자를 주도했습니다. 이런 그가 비트코인은 단순한 자산이 아니라고 강조하며 부를 보존하기 위한 혁명적인 프로토콜이라고 설명하죠. 그는 기하급수적인 보상을 얻는 것에 비유하며 비트코인 투자를 하라고 얘기합니다.
That Ferrari that you're going to buy is going to cost you like 6 Bitcoin. And so it's going to be $100 million Ferrari, right? If you look out 20 years. So you have to keep your job, unless you're insanely rich, don't splurge on the Ferrari. Buy the 6 Bitcoin instead. And with regard to leverage, the intelligent leverage for the individual is generally long-dated, mid-dated mortgage debt. So if I have any kind of property, if I have a house, I would put a long mortgage on it, a 10-year mortgage or 15 to 20-year mortgage on it, especially a conforming loan, and then I would roll it into Bitcoin. Because mortgage debt is not mark to market. It's against an asset which is fairly stable. The promise of Bitcoin and the Bitcoin standard is that every company can be well capitalized. Because if you simply start sweeping your cash flows into Bitcoin, or you convert your dividend into a Bitcoin buy, or if you convert your buyback of stock into a buyback of Bitcoin, then your enterprise value over time would double. And your organization would be valued partially on future expectations, but partially on the assets you own. And so you can imagine when 95% of the value is future expectations, when they become uncertain, 95% of the value becomes uncertain. But when half the value of a company is based upon the assets they own, right, then they have a built-in insurance policy or a shock absorber, and they have the luxury of being able to sit back and see how things work out, but without being desperate or taking short-term actions. Every single crisis recruits a new class of Bitcoin believers. There's just a delay in between the crisis and the Bitcoin rally. So for example, and I remember when Bitcoin was 10,000 and the NASDAQ was like 12,000. And then Bitcoin would rally up and rage, and then there would be a crypto crash, and it came down. And on the other hand, here we are today, Bitcoin's like 96 or 97,000, the NASDAQ 17,000. And now we're in a big tariff crisis, and the near-term reaction is always the market cramps and everybody sells everything. But the long-term reaction is, if I had all my money invested in Bitcoin instead of invested in that company, I wouldn't have been affected by tariffs. And Bitcoin doesn't have supply chains. It doesn't have all of the regulatory risk, the tax risk, the operating and the execution risk that you have when you have a business based upon providing products and services in a particular way.
You've said that if you want to 10x your money, buy Bitcoin. If you want to 100x your money, buy Bitcoin with someone else's money. And if you want to 1000x your money, then buy Bitcoin with someone else's money and lever it.
It's an exponential process. When I was at MIT, I studied complex exponential systems. And they started with an illustration where they say, well, you have a pond and there are lily pads in the pond, and it takes 30 days for the lily pads to spread across the pond, but they're doubling every day. On what day of the month will you notice you have any lily pads? You know, it's a quick test of exponential math, but you realize the first 3 weeks of the month, you don't see any lily pads in the pot, right? And then you like notice a little bit. And then like in 3 days of the month, everything happens. And so I think what's happening here is there's a exponential phenomena. The secret of Bitcoin and the simple, elegant truth and the reason that it's spreading virally everywhere on earth and the reason it'll keep spreading. So a lot of smart people in the world, they just want to keep their money. That's the secret, right? People buy Bitcoin because they want to keep their money. People are starting to buy Bitcoin treasury companies like Strategy because we've constructed a very elegant, powerful business model based upon digital capital that strips away all of the dozen risks that are plaguing every other well-run company in the world right now. And so investors are smart. They think, well, how do I get a return and avoid the risk and what's working? And, more and more are discovering our company every day.
마이클 세일러는 결국 재정적 성공은 지연된 만족에 달려있다고 말하며 시간이 지남에 따라 비트코인의 가치가 급격히 상승할 것이라 보고 있습니다. 그리고 글로벌 충격이 포트폴리오 전략을 제고하게 만든다고 설명합니다. 그는 각 위기에 왜 비트코인이 가장 적응력 있고 회복력 있는 금융 자산인지 전혀 다른 차원의 자산이라고 말하죠. 결국 변동성이 크지만 더 강력하다는 전망과 함께 새로운 금융 운영 시스템을 제안하고 있습니다. 우리는 객관적인 시각으로 투자를 해야 하고 지금 당장만 보고 투자할 게 아니라 미래를 보고 투자를 해야겠죠. 010-2472-0429 전화번호로 탈겜이 적어서 문자 보내주시면 2025년 비트코인과 코인 시장에 대한 분석, 정보들 공유해드리겠습니다. 현재 우리에게 중요한 것은 이러한 정보를 어떻게 활용할 것인가입니다. 지금까지 영상 시청해주셔서 감사하고요. 다음에 더 좋은 영상으로 찾아뵙겠습니다. 감사합니다.